Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Creatives. I say good morning because I'm here in the UK, but good afternoon or good evening if you're anywhere else in the world. I'm Melanie Perry.
I'm Julie Hyde-Mew.
And this is On the Couch with Creatives. Fans of the show will know that we're part of the Creatives Group, the private network for creative professionals everywhere. Together, we help you to create at your best, connect you with like-minded individuals, and therefore help you to grow your creative business. That sounds like a good idea to you and you'd like to find out more? Please don't hesitate to reach out to us after the show. We'd be delighted to talk to you. But right now it's time for On the Couch. So Julie, who do we have on the couch today?
Today we are talking to Mike Davis, a color grader in the film and television industry for many years now, and he's worked for Pinewood Studios and Warner Brothers, and he works on feature films and some huge ones, such as Barbie and Mission Impossible 7 and 8. Color graders are among the highest paid individuals in the post-production process in the film and television industry. So very important people, really. Let's get him on the couch. Hello, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us on the couch. Lovely to see you.
Hello. Thanks for inviting me. Nice to be here.
Well, let's kick off. What exactly is a colorist? For those out there who do not know what colorists do, could you give us a brief description of exactly what you do?
Sure. So a colorist is someone that the easiest way to explain it is it's like photoshopping moving pictures. Colorist is someone that adjusts the like exposure, the brightness, contrast, color balance of shots in a movie, in a TV series, anything video related, so that those shots, when cut together, appear smooth and they kind of the look of the image flows, and you even out changes in lighting and exposure. Like if you're if they're shooting outside during the day, for example, the sun changes and the clouds come over, so you have to even that out because obviously what they're shooting is not in the sequence with how it's finished. So that's one side of things, and then also you grade it so that it has a particular look that is in keeping with the story, the narrative of whatever the piece is, to kind of enhance the emotional impact of whatever's going on in the scene.
So basically, if you're working on a horror movie, you don't want to bring bright orange sunlight into the picture.
Not often. Like you wouldn't want like a romantic. You don't often have romantic comedies that are like really dark and moody and gritty, and like there's drain all the color out of everyone's faces, so it looks like they're having a laugh and then someone's being murdered in the next room. You kind of want, the kind of if it's like a light, if like the tone of the thing is like light and fun, then you kind of want the colors and the image to reflect that.
If you when you're color grading, how much? Because obviously when you're on set, you have lighting experts who are kind of lighting the mood and making it warm or cool or whatever. How much is that, and how much is your job as a grader to say right, you've got the raw footage which they've set all the lights up beautifully, blah, blah. What's the layer that you add on top of that? Is it just to make it to enhance the mood of the piece, or as you said, making sure? Because I guess if you're in a room with lights and you've got, I can understand with a bit of natural daylight, you're going to combat the sun's going to move. But if you're in a closed set or a warehouse with green screen or whatever, and the scene's lit in a particular way, what is then your job to add to that?
Yeah, sure. Like where does the line between how is the set? So the in a way, the quick answer to that would be it depends how good everyone is, and how much of everything is planned in advance, how much can be done on set, how much there is a budget to do. So generally the things, in my experience, the things that work best, the final colorist pretty much has to do the least on, because like 90-95% of the look is already there in the image to start with, and you're just like giving it polish and just helping the edit smooth out. But for example, majority of the work that I do is as a dailies colorist. So I work on large feature films, and they'll be shooting all day, and they have DOPs and camera crews and directors that are literally the best in the business doing it, and they've got all the budget to do all the kind of things they want to do. But there will be usually someone called a DOT on set, monitoring this and monitoring all the cameras and recording everything and overseeing certain things. But the conditions that they're watching stuff in are not usually ideal. They'll be in a tent on the set. It's all blacked out, so it's kind of ideal conditions. But they're also having to do like a million things to check that all the cameras are actually at the correct ISO and exposure and balance and stuff. But they don't have the time and the ability to like compare what they're shooting right now with what they were shooting like 6 hours ago, and how those levels like exactly compare. So even things that are like shot amazingly well, and the lighting is such that you wouldn't want to veer too much away from what it looks like in the first place. There's still like discrepancies between slate 22B and slate 22H, which is shot a few hours later, because they're not constantly monitoring everything. And so in that evening, that's my job to make sure those things are all leveled out, and that's before it's even cut together. So yeah, and other times when stuff just really doesn't have the budget, it doesn't have the budget to have like lights and 4 people on a camera crew and people monitoring all this stuff, then you have a bit more work to do. Like something like a documentary, for example, where the sources have just called from all over the place, like half of them are archived. There's a lot more threading that and funneling it down to how you want it to look. So it really depends what the budget is, what the budget of stuff is, and whether someone randomly changed their mind at the last minute and just veers off and goes mental, decides they want it to look completely different.
Yeah.
Then it's a bit of a mess.
Now, obviously, we live in the digital age, so you work on a computer with software, correct?
Yes.
Now, what did Colourist do before?
Well, so when I started doing this line of work, it was most films are still shot on film, and film is still used now. And when I started doing this, digital cameras were started to be used more and more, but they didn't look great. And everyone was like, "Oh, everything's digital now. It's going to be a lot simpler. It's going to be a lot easier because you can just see it straight off the camera." And what actually happened is, because you kind of could do something, then people expected everything. So the same image had to go from like a camera to both a mobile phone and an IMAX screen the size of a building. So everything actually got a lot more complicated. But in terms of the grading bit, what used to happen was it was all done photochemically. So the colours were adjusted in a lab, and the decisions were made based on essentially how long the film was going through certain paths. So if you expose it for a certain amount of time in this, then it would shift in one stop at one point in a red or blue direction. So the decisions were, you were a lot more limited with what you could do, because all you could really do was shift the ratio between the red, the green, and the blue, and like the overall exposure. And that's what's these days and then is using something called printer lights, because you would be like, right, I want 2 points more of green, 1 point less blue, and that was pretty much all you could do. So yeah, now everything's digital. You can tweak things as much as you want, and you can nerd out as much as you want. Which
it must have been very laborious, because they would have had to do that physically, one frame at a time.
Oh no, it's still like you'd still, so there was still a degree of like, it wasn't file based, but it was all done on, well, you still like kind of scan things through a machine. But like, for example, the cinematographer, the film would get shot during the day, and it was only really the cinematographer that had a vague idea of really like what it was going to look like. So the film would be shot, then it would go through a film lab and be processed like, old school film used to. And so but yeah, the film would go through a lab, and then there used to be someone like doing my job, working overnight in a lab doing that process. And then that would get, prints would be made of that, and those prints would be shown like the next morning or next evening after wrap. And that was the colours would be the first person that would actually see the image. And so they would you print the selects, and that would be printed onto film, and that would be screened like in the theatre the next day, and that's the first time that anyone would see on set what they'd actually shot the day before.
Wow. And these days, as you say, I mean, you can get lost in colour because you can have pretty much anything. When you get into the nitty gritty now in packages like with Adobe, you have got a million different settings for colour, let alone everything else. You've got the hue, the saturation, the this, the RGB, and then you've got lovely little colour wheels and graphs and wavy lines and spectral meters and blah, blah. How in the hell do you actually decide, right, it's that and it's that and it's that? Because sometimes when I look at things, I can lose days just fiddling about with it. And then I'll come back to it the next day. I think, no, I don't like it. How do you, obviously you must have a good eye to say, right, that's going to match and that's going to match. And I've got the colours in my head and I know the codes of what I'm going to use.
Yes, there are about 8 or 9 million ways that you can mess stuff up. Yeah, there's some setting for everything, and it's tiring.
I think out of those 9 million ways to mess things up, I've probably found most of them to be popular.
Yeah, there's it can be a very complicated chain, and you kind of just have to get used to that. Like,
how did you decide?
10 years ago, there was like, when there was TV, there was like, and there was like 4 channels and all this kind of stuff. There was like 1 frame rate in this country for TV, and then 1 for film, and everything just like there was 1 size for like SCTV, and just everything was much more simplified. In terms of all the color settings, though, yes, it's like as soon as something can be done, then there's a whole lot of settings over there to do that. So it can feel like just a complete assault of like, what does this stuff do? In terms of grading it, the different people are different, but the way that I was taught and the way I kind of currently think is that once you've got like a control surface, a panel in front of you, you kind of just have to use these like 3 trackballs largely, is what I use, and you kind of just have to feel your way around it. So you kind of nudge the colours in all various directions and the brightnesses in various different directions, and you kind of see what fits and what suits. Some people do, for some insane reason, still like to kind of get a pen or a mouse and control all the sliders individually, or try and do things like, I'm going to take this down from 40% to 32%, and just some people have a much more technical approach to it where things are either right or wrong. That's not really how my brain works. But yeah, there are, if anyone's like interested in grading, then I'd encourage them to get a panel, like just a small, relatively cheap one, quite quickly, because if I just get, I've got one, like a little one here on my desk, I can show you. So something like this, which see that?
Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah. So you've got these 3 little rings and 3 little balls here. And so like if you do that, that can be the equivalent of doing like 8 different sliders. So if you're just kind of constantly nudging all these things around, then you're essentially changing about, 14 different settings every time you touch it.
Wow.
So you kind of just get a feel for it, is the short and unhelpful answer.
How did you decide then when, that this was what you wanted to be? When people talk about films, normally it's, I'm going to be an actor, I'm going to be a director, I'm going to be a producer, I'm going to be a cameraman. How did you come into, right, I'm going to be a colour grader and I'm going to make this stuff look fantastic? How did you make that decision?
Well, I thought of that yesterday, actually. So I used to like films a lot when I was younger. And as a kind of like escapism thing, really. But I did a degree in film and video technology, which seemed interesting at the time when I applied. But it was like a mix of like kind of creative and technical stuff, which suited my brain and interests. And I remember quite vividly. I remember this. We had a series of seminars in our 3rd year university that were given by the person that at the time I think was the head of training for Kodak. And it was like these 3 1-hour just talks about the industry and just stuff within it. And at one point, in one of them, he said like, and yes, and then this is, I think he was talking about the photochemical process, like stuff going through a lab. He was like, yes, and then then it goes to a person called a colorist. And what they do is, it's quite an antisocial job because they work at night. But they kind of change all the colours and the exposure, like the picture of stuff, and just it's quite a complicated job. You have to be quite clever, but it's also quite creative. And it's also paid quite well, and all those things. I was just like, what's this? I don't know. And that kind of stuck out. I was like, I made a mental note, like, okay, that seems reasonable. And then he just carried on with his talking about it. So I kind of had that stuck in my head. And then I finished university and did what I think a lot of people that just generically liked film and TV and wanted to get into and tried to get jobs in production companies, and unsurprisingly discovered that every 3rd person in the world is trying to do the same thing. But then I tried to get, I went and lived in Vancouver for a year and ended up kind of running one of the projection booths in the cinema downtown there. And so got a lot of film handling experience, cutting together film reels to be shown and projecting them. And then got a job, got an entry-level job when I came back here in a post-production house and ended up working my way up. But I kind of had that, when I was flailing around deciding what to do, I still had that memory back of that one particular job that seemed quite interesting. So that's kind of how I gravitated towards it. And then it's a lot easier when you've got like a particular thing in mind to steer yourself towards it. So that was quite helpful.
You worked for Pinewood Studios for quite a few years, didn't you?
Yes. So I got a job there, doing a bunch of stuff. I was there for 5 years. So Pinewood and Shepperton. So I was working across both. The reason I was hired was to work in their restoration department. So there's various kind of avenues of colour grading. And what I was doing was we were restoring old films, essentially things like Blu-ray, and for like people like the BFI have like massive back catalogues of film snippets and newsreel and stuff, and just films going back for the best part of 100 years, over 100 years.
Wow.
So we would get bits of film and scan them. I would polish them up to make them look halfway decent. And yeah, I must have done over like 100 old films, some more memorable titles like Waterworld and A Fish Called Wanda. So some went on Blu-ray, some went on like various company websites. Some were just for like stock images that companies had bought clips of, so we had to scan them in a high res and deliver them. And we did some finishing for a few finishing things for like TV and features. We did a few of those. So there's quite a mix of stuff. And also at the same time, there was, because it's Pinewood and Shepton, new films being shot there. So I was doing the dailies, which is like the on-set type stuff. So yeah, a mix of stuff.
What films have you worked on recently?
I mean, currently I'm in the middle of doing Mission Impossible 8.
Wow.
Which,
Did you believe it?
so yeah, I've been doing 7 and 8. I took over 7 like halfway through. I mean, they started shooting that in February 2020, so it's been going a while. That, and I did the previous one, so Fallout. I did, and I'm also doing Venom 3 at the moment. What's the plan? I've been involved in various Star Wars films like Rogue One and Han Solo spin-off. Yeah, a bunch like Jason Bourne, Assassin's Creed. I did. I did Wonka. I did Barbie. Forgot about that.
Of Barbie.
Did the Flash that came out last year.
Did you have to add in a lot of pink?
No, I had to do very little on that. So I was getting that. That was already quite pink. I had to do very little on that because that was shot amazingly well. And the DFU is like insanely nice. Rodrigo, he's wicked. Everyone was working on that actually. They would like come into the screenings every Wednesday, and yeah, like everyone was really nice. It was like my favourite film to work on, just because everyone was so nice and everyone was just so happy all the time.
Now, when you work on films like this, and sometimes these films are wrapped up under heavy security, do you have to sign NDAs because you're one of the first people to see these films, to see the rushes, really?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, like, yes. I mean, like, officially, yes, of course. Yeah, yes, you're meant to sign NDAs, but a lot of people don't get around to it. But I think if anyone asks that, oh yeah, I signed it. Yeah. But yeah, like some are more strict than others. But I think there's a kind of once you get to a certain level that like no one's stupid enough to be mentioning plot points or who's in this or like taking photos of on set, or you just wouldn't do it because it's just, that would be insane. I worked somewhere where, like years back, I worked somewhere where one of the assistants like uploaded a full working copy of one of the films to like a Russian streaming website, and it, like overnight, and like the studio found out about this, and because of the upload and stuff, they managed to trace it. Like they found out the IP from the computer it came from, and they managed to trace it back to the edit suite that it was uploaded from and the time. And so it was like, right, so that was your suite. And it was just like, right, so essentially overnight, this person just disappeared from the company and was ejected from the industry and was told, like, if you ever apply for anything again, I mean, this is what I've kind of heard, like, you know, if you ever apply for anything in this industry again, the studio will come after you for all the financial costs that what you've done has incurred, which will bankrupt you forever. So, like, you just don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there has to be a level of trust. Absolutely.
Yeah, because if everyone's constantly monitoring everything, then it creates that atmosphere that people can't get work done. It's just, yeah, I think if anyone even starts doing anything stupid, then like they would just be pushed off site fairly quickly.
Ejected very forcibly and very quickly.
They just get
it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. You know, you're not going to put a project that you've invested millions and millions and millions of pounds in at risk, are you? And in these days, as you said, you'd have to be pretty bloody stupid because it's all digital. It's like, you know, master criminals do get found eventually because everything online is traceable. Even stuff in the dark web now is traceable. There are police teams who monitor the dark web and people that think you can get away with stuff. It will catch up with you in some way. You will have an IP address. You will leave a digital imprint somewhere.
Footprints everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's metadata and everything. There's like part of the one of the challenges and one of the challenges and benefits of everything being so complicated is that there has to be metadata tracking everything throughout the chain. So you can do that. So yeah, like if you do anything silly with it, then it's like, just why?
Yes.
Like people spend so long trying to get in the industry, that to do something that jeopardizes it, it's just like, well, you kind of deserve to be kicked out if you're doing that.
So what would your top tips be for people who are entering the industry or are already in the industry? What are your 3 top tips?
I think, well, the first one would be like if you're starting out and you're like trying to get volunteer jobs and assistant jobs, would be no matter how like small a job you're given to do, or a small task you're given to do, just do absolutely everything well and quickly and efficiently and without pissing people off. Like, which it sounds like something you can completely take for granted, but yeah, throughout my time I've seen so many people that like, well, it's their first day, they turn up like late and they just kind of moan about stuff, and they'll be asked to like take this thing and give it to that person, and halfway along the way they'll just like stop and get chatting to someone, and then like they'll get a message on their phone, so they'll be like just standing there for a few minutes, and it's like all you had to do was take this book and put it on that shelf, and you managed to just you managed to do it in such a way that someone had to intervene, and that kind of, yeah, you can tell the people that are actually going to go fairly far very smoothly because they just do fairly basic tasks quite well, and you're only going to be get given something more with more responsibility if you've just proven that you can do something that like anyone can do without, you know, ruffling feathers and without causing a scene. So that'd be one. Basic just basic competence would be one, which is overlooked. Number 2, what I put. So another thing is that it is an industry much more than most, where it kind of quite a lot of it's about who you know and connections and contacts and networking and stuff. And yes, there is like an element of like that person's that one's son, so they get that job, and there is an element of that. But at the same time, that yes, it's about who you know. So you can either, like, if you don't know anyone in it or don't, you know, happen to be from a family directors, then you can either whine about how unfair it is, or you can just actually start contacting people and networking, and you can do things to make those connections and just to help out. And it takes time and can be a bit of a pain, but in my experience, there's more often than not like a reason why people hire people they know and trust, and based on personal recommendations. Like if you take an example of like a film crew is out, you know, on a hillside in like February on the outskirts of Glasgow, it's like it's pissing down with rain, everyone's cold, everyone's freezing, everyone's been there for like 12 hours. They want someone that they know can just, if someone's asked to do this thing, then it will just get done. And because they've done it before and people vouch for them, like they just need people that they can get on with, they know they can get on with. So if like the next project comes up, be like, okay, well, I liked working with that person, so I'm going to hire them, and they like working with that person. So that's kind of why it works. There's a slight element of risk aversion, but people just want to work with the people they like and trust. And if no one knows you, then they don't really have much reason to hire you. And it's not fair compared to other jobs where you just apply and you're, but I've got this at my CV. I'm unqualified. And it doesn't really work like that, because, you can be the most qualified person in the world, but everyone could still just hate you. So that's why. So yeah, I would advise just finding people that are in it and networking, and just try and get your way in by being nice and competent and helpful, essentially. Third one is you use a bit of initiative and essentially try and learn things before. Like, if you want to get a job, try and learn as much as you can in the things that you would be doing in that job before trying to apply. Like, if you want to make films, don't wait until you're going to get a job as a filmmaker, because that's not going to happen. Like, if you want to make a filmmaker, then go and make some films. Like, demonstrate you can do the thing that you want to be hired for. There are so many free tools to do, everything in this now. Like, grading wise, you can download Resolve for free. You can go online and get there's just hours and hours of masses of training and free courses. You can learn all this stuff to a certain level, like to a good enough level to get, a foot in the door. You don't, like, opportunities come up like at the last minute, and you don't want to be the person that's like, we need someone to do this, and you're like, oh, I can do that if you train me all on how to do it. No, that's doesn't how it works. Like, the number of people I've known and worked with that complain they don't get given projects to do, or they don't get promoted, or they don't do this and do that, and then they complain like, well, I haven't had the training on that. It's like, you've been sitting in front of the computer that does it for the last 4 years, like, just on your phone. You could have taught yourself 5 times over in that time. So you need to have a bit of initiative to just learn everything that you can before it's needed, or like at least the basics of it. Yeah, you can't really sit back and expect everything to come to you.
Not at all. They're great tips, and that works as well in business as well. You can't go at things and have just a God Almighty sense of entitlement. It doesn't work. You need to be curious, learn the stuff, as you said. You need to be able to be willing to do stuff to a high standard within a reasonable time frame, something that in business I find that people seem to find quite difficult, especially youngsters. And it's like, you're not doing yourself any favours, because we've all said in the networking environment, and it's such a cliche and everyone says it over and over and over, but it's true. People will work with the people they know, like, and trust. To get to the know, like, and trust, you have to demonstrate that you're likable and that people can trust you, so that you are displaying a level of competence, even if it is, as you said, somebody saying, go put this book on that shelf, go and get that person a coffee. Shit, I've forgotten my mobile from my office. Can you go get it because I need it now? And not get sidetracked on the way, or think, oh, this is beneath me. Because when you first start out in the industry, you have to be prepared, no matter what. Even if you're working in an office worker, you need to be able to do the low down things so that people then build up a picture of you and say, actually, yes, she's really good, or he's really good, because I've asked them to do that thing. They've always done it. They've done it on time. They've done it when I've asked. That person's reliable. I'm going to get them back in. If you let people down, if you give people grief, if you're going to moan and carry on and be a right old misery, you're not going to work again. It's just that simple. Yeah. People don't want to be around people like that. And people...
Mike's a bit different what you do, Mike, because you work on your own, don't you? You're this little night owl sitting in a cave through the night hours, aren't you?
A bit. Like, most of my work involves going and sitting on an industrial estate in a dark, windowless room by myself. There are other people I work with, but But yes, there's less opportunity to annoy people, which is disappointing. But yeah, like another element to that is that like if you're giving little jobs to do, don't over-engineer them. It's like trying to show off. Like I've come across countless times. It's like, can you do this? And like, yes, I've made a spreadsheet and I've color coded it, and it's really clever because you've got all these links and stuff.
Want that?
I don't need that. I needed it done like 3 days ago in the way that I asked. Just you're not going to impress anyone by sucking up in a way that
Exactly. Like know your audience, isn't it? When someone asks you for something in a certain way, just do it in the way that they want. Absolutely. Right. It's that time, Julie. It's that time where I get excited. Going to get my cards out.
Well, Melanie gets excited, Mike, and our guests sort of look at her with absolute dread. What on earth are you going to be throwing at me now?
Just might have to give my account sort code, is it? Right.
No, we're going to get. This is the on the couch bit of on the couch, Mike. We're going to get inside your psyche, that beautiful brain of yours. Okay. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to run my fingers along the cards. I'm going to ask you to pick a card. So just say stop when you want me to pick a card.
It's like tension.
Oh.
Right, stop.
Oh. Okay. This one here. Let's see what you picked. Oh. This is quite a good one. Not particularly necessarily for you, but for what we've been talking about anyway, especially in the film industry. And the youngsters that come into it, I think they're going to be hits overnight. But you picked ambition, the value of ambition.
Right.
And as we're creatives, we're going to ask you some creatively questions about what you think about ambition. So, Mike, what does ambition mean to you? First of all, what does it look like?
In practice, I'd say like effort. The people, I don't know, I would say effort, because the people that have ambition generally have an end goal in mind and are trying to get there instead of sitting back and seeing what happens. So, yes, they generally apply themselves a bit better.
Yeah.
You kind of have to be a bit careful not to. So, I've worked quite a bit in post-production houses, and there's kind of like an unspoken hierarchy of people. I mean, there is like a literal hierarchy because it's like assistant person does it and that. But you have to be a bit careful with that, because you have to also be patient. You can ruffle a lot of feathers by thinking like, exactly like you said, I'm better than this. I know how to do that job. And you don't want to fall into that trap, because then you rub people the wrong way and then you never get anywhere. But generally, like, people that are quietly ambitious, I fully admire, because they apply themselves a bit more and use a bit more initiative and just learn stuff and think a couple of steps ahead. Like, right, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to need to know this, so I'm going to learn this. But then you also meet the really cocky ones that are like, I'm going to be in charge of this, and just try and go around other people, and that just they get hit with a stick.
So it looks like effort, and also a bit cocky, a bit cocky, and the people who apply the effort.
It depends who I have in my mind first.
If ambition was a feeling, what do you think it would feel like?
Rage.
Rage.
I don't know. Ambition.
Like the fiery character from what was it? Is it Inside Out, the Disney movie, with all the emotions, and the one fiery one that keeps blowing up. What do you think it sounds like, Mike? If it had a sound, what would it sound like?
I don't know.
There's no wrong or right answer to this question. Just Whatever you feel like.
It's your head.
What's ambition sound like?
You've stumped him, Julie.
I was just thinking, we've stumped him.
I have no idea.
I'm going to ask another question now.
But the thing is, we're talking to a colorist, aren't we? So
what is that? What
sound has
colour
got
is it?
nothing to do.
Oh, yeah, no one cares about sound. Sound is rubbish. Pictures, mate. Just pictures.
What colour is it? What colour is that?
Oh,
Wow.
ambition, red.
Red.
Red. It's like
You know.
passion. Like, it's
Passion,
drive. Yeah, red. Adrenaline.
Wonderful. Well, Mike, it's been wonderful talking to you and finding out what you do. It's something that people don't think about when they think about producing movies, that there are all these tiny little nitty-gritty jobs that need to be done in the production of a film. And it's been very interesting talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's all right. You're welcome. It's been fun. Yeah, I've been doing this for like 10, 15 years. My family still don't understand what I do, so it's not. Yeah.
It's such an essential part of film. You know, it's there are so many parts to making a film look great. You know, so many millions of people that are involved to make that happen. And it has been an absolute delight to find out more about the technical side of film and how it gets to be that polished, wonderful version when it hits everybody's screens. I've found it thoroughly fascinating. So yes, indeed. Thank you. Again, another guest that I could talk forever and ever. And thank you to our viewers for tuning in today. Thank you to Julie for joining me on the couch. But until next time, we'll see you.